So this past weekend, we got a lot of great disc golf coming from so many different avenues, but there was just one stark point of contrast that I thought was very intriguing, and that would be the fact that on the exact same day, Kristin Tattar got one of the best FPO rated rounds in history, whereas Catrina Allen may have had one of her worst rounds in history. Let's talk about it. First off, I think I need to talk about Kristens Round because it was just kind of an altogether experience that you really had to watch in order to gather why it was so bizarre and cool and weird and sad. And that was because she is still in Europe playing in the European Disc Golf Championship, which I feel like is kind of like the worlds of the Europe scene. I don't really know. And it's like associated by country, so you're kind of representing your country, and that also has a certain amount of weight attached to it. So there's just a lot of weird factors going on. But not only are you representing your country, this is actually located in Tallinn, Estonia. So being an Estonian, I bet she has a lot of weight on her shoulders, knowing that everybody there kind of knows Kristin as like the GOAT, the best disc golfer in history, and just kind of feels like the representative of the entire country. So there's just a lot of weight going on in that. But with that, let's get into round two. So with all that weight on her shoulders, you really couldn't tell. I will say that the drives weren't necessarily that fantastic. There was just a good amount of consistency in her entire round. And starting the day with a 4-round lead, you kind of know Kristin's just gonna pull away. And pull away she did, because by the end of it, she had a 16-stroke lead, which involved a bogeyless round, some very good outside circle 2 putts on 3 holes, marking a 75% circle 2 percentage, just absolutely insane, 100% circle 1. And I think the main thing here was just control. There was a lot of shots that I just kind of feel like I don't really know how they look in real life, so the only way I can perceive them is on YouTube, and it's gonna be heavily compressed. But from that perspective, it looked like the drives were a little short, a little off, a little low. But with that said, she was able to get her upshots dialed in, and that was where she got the majority of her putts, where she had easy up and downs for birdie, allowing her to get a phenomenal stroke separation on the rest of the field. And basically, even though there was some phenomenal players on the card, this was basically the Kristin show through and through, because every time she was on circle's edge, you basically knew she was going to jam it, and the entire fan section was going to go crazy. With that fan section, I actually wanted to bring up, this is such a bizarre course because it's like the most urban course I've ever seen. It kind of feels like that urban disc golf miniseries that I highly recommend all you watch because it's insanely cool. But the entire course is just kind of located in this like public park, but it's also fenced off to basically have a bunch of OB on every single hole, but it still has a good amount of distance, which is crazy for a public park to have an entire 18 holes. But to add on to that, I think this does allow Kristin to have a good amount of confidence because there's not too many trees, there's not too many obstacles. And if Kristin has a good line to the basket, she is going to get it. So with that phenomenal round, she ended with a rating of 1054, which absolutely dominates her highest rated round from the past, which was a 1033 at Worlds last year. And with a 1054, you're lighting up MPO, so I'm just kind of in shock. I don't know how she did it. That's madness. There is definitely one asterisk you could put here, and that is that the field strength is pretty low. There are not too many players out here that have very close of a rating to Kristin. We got Henna, Evelina, and Heidi, so that does kind of skew ratings a little bit. But with that said, this is still such a phenomenal round. You really cannot have too much fault with it. So with that phenomenal round, she had a strong lead against the rest of the field, and she kind of coasted on in. And when I say coasted, I mean she kind of fumbled her way to the win, which is hard to say because that is definitely not the style that Kristin has. And in her final round, it was just a semi-disaster. She went out of bounds 6 times, had a 14% circle 2 and a 38% circle 1. There was just bogeys galore. There was no way her round was getting anywhere close to even. And coming from that phenomenal 11 under on round 2, it was just looking like she might actually throw it away. But in typical Kristin fashion, she clutches up when she needs to and throws an insanely good aggressive drive right up to circle 1, and then taps in her birdie, making her a European disc golf champion. And in that final hole, I felt so much emotion coming from Kristin that we just don't often see in the US, because I think there's just a lot less going on in her mind, but with so much country pride, so much stress, so much awareness of how bad your last round was. I think she has a huge standard that she sets for herself, and when she falls short of that, she just goes into panic mode, which is still some great disc golf. So after she made that last great drive, she knew she had won. There was no way she was going to give it up, and of course Silver comes out of nowhere giving her a big hug, and she shows so much emotion. She is crying her eyes out, and you can tell this is just so weird. There's like the good vibes because she just won and that's awesome and she's crushing it. There's the bad vibes because she's had one of the worst rounds she's ever had. There was like the pride of Estonia, and she's like, I mean, yeah, I won, so that's good. But then there's like the shame because she's had one of her worst rounds. And it really is just a bizarre circumstance where there's just a million things going on in her head, I'm sure. So she just kind of has to deal with all of those things going on all at once in public with everyone watching you, all these cameras. But with that said, I think this is still one of her best performances that she has ever had. Sure, we have one of the worst rounds, but overall she showed a great amount of consistency. Her putting was electric like it always is. And even though she does have a potential of injury, I think she's looking strong enough that it will not be a concern. And if she manages it well, like she did last year, injury will not stop her from being a two-time world champ. So from one awful round to the next, let's move on to Catrina Allen. So Catrina Allen definitely has some faltering that is going on recently, and I'm not sure if it's necessarily a form thing. I don't know if she's injured. She hasn't really mentioned any injury. So I think it really is just a mental thing where she's kind of getting like the yips, not really confident with anything that she does. She has an early release, a late release, goes out of bounds, misses a putt, misses a comeback putt. There's just so much going on, and especially in round 2. But I will note before we get to round 2, she did have a freaking throw in, getting an eagle on hole 14, but still has a pretty rough round 3 with a triple to end it. All right, so round 2, I think this was definitely one of the lowest points we've ever seen from Catrina. We know she has some blow up holes. We know that she can have some missed putts, but the confidence and demeanor was just so lackluster. And coming off round 1, where it also wasn't really that good, she had a 0% circle 2, a 51% circle 1. These are just not stats that we typically see from Catrina. But apart from a double on hole 9, it really wasn't looking all that bad. Sure, she had some early releases. She missed her circle 2 putts, but the real disaster came in the back 6 holes. I think it's important to look back at her round 1 performance, where she ended up even on her back 9, whereas in round 2, it was a total disaster. We get to hole 13. She misses 2 circle 1 putts, and you're just thinking like, yeah, there's just something going on. Her putt was not looking good. It was not looking like she was doing her normal putting routine. She was rushing it. She was not really focused. And then she comes back, gets a birdie on hole 14. But then on hole 15, we have another instance where she just has 2 bad circle 1 putts, which you just don't expect to see from Catrina. And then we end it with the last 3 holes being also not that good. First, hole 16, she throws out of bounds, lays up, gets a bogey. Hole 17, she was just off the fairway, and there was just no way she was gonna get up and down. So even though she did not go out of bounds, she still missed her circle 2 putt and got a double. Then on hole 18, it was a combination of the past 2 holes where she throws out of bounds and misses her circle 2 putt. So overall, it is just one of those weird sensations where one of the best players, a world champion, is falling flat in just a bizarre manner, where it just looks like she's not even really in the game. She actually mentioned that if she could, she would just drive home right now because she just hates it and is not enjoying it. And that also has to be factored into what this round is. It is a lot more emotion than just missing your lines, missing a circle 2 putt here and there. There is a lot of things going on behind the scenes. And you can kind of see the positive and negative energies coming from the 2 players, where Kristin is having that electric confidence that you need for a world title, and Catrina is just kind of faltering, losing her momentum, not really focused, which is going to be a major detriment if she is going to take down the world championship. But all this to say, sure, Catrina Allen is not doing her best, but who knows? She is one of the most confident throwers, and if she can just get her mojo back in a little over a week, which is possible for Catrina Allen, then I think she definitely can get back, get a top 3 finish, maybe even a win, and fight back to get another world championship. Do I believe this to be the most likely outcome? Probably not. I think Kristin is just feeling so good. I know this is probably not the final round that she wanted coming into Worlds, but that doesn't really matter. I think her momentum of just being such a consistent, phenomenal, great player, there are no faults in her game. Sure, her distance is a little bit lacking. That doesn't really matter in my mind. I think her level of consistency will carry her through to the next world championship. But with that said, this is not just about me. This is about you guys. What do you think? Were you surprised by Kristin absolutely destroying her old highest rated round? Or on the flip side, were you shocked by her last round where she went +8? I would love to hear about it. And for Catrina, what do you think will come of her recent lackluster finishing? And do you think she has a chance to take down another world championship? I'd love to hear about it. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Wild Runs, signing out. Peace.